Hello and welcome to the new Book of Daniel podcast for March 10th, the year 2021. I'm Daniel Bobinski. I will be your host on this adventure. We're talking about stuff in the news, looking at it from a Patriot's perspective. Before I dig in and kind of jump into what's really going to be happening here next, couple weeks, we need to talk about what I'm going to be doing for a couple weeks. Turns out that Facebook decided one of my live broadcasts didn't meet their standards, their community standards. Apparently, I was talking about an event that happened on November 3rd. From a perspective of a particular general from the U.S. Army who was going to be the national security advisor at one point in time. And I was quoting him. And I guess that's not allowed on YouTube to talk about what the general was talking about. And so, I went through all my show notes and I'm thinking, what could possibly have been so offensive to have been deleted from YouTube? And that's what it was. That had to have been the only issue, because that's the only issue of my list of topics from that date that seems to be on their radar of things you can't talk about. So I'm here tonight and tomorrow and the next day and this morning or wherever you happen to be, just giving you a little bit of a softer take on the news. I am going to continue doing live streams on YouTube, at least for the foreseeable future. The issue, though, is that I'm not going to be doing any hard-hitting news, because that's the stuff that gets your channel flagged. Like I said, they removed the video, no warning. They didn't say why. They just removed it with a little friendly note that said, "Oh, by the way, if this happens again, we will suspend your channel for a week. You won't be able to upload anything at all." So I'm kind of looking at that going, I have people, asking me, how come I'm not posting more often? I've got a lot of stuff, a lot of irons in the fire I'm working on right now. So it's one of those things that I'm pretty busy. I would like to do this more often. But if I'm going to have to be very much self-censoring to figure out what I can and can't say on this particular channel, on this particular platform, then something's seriously wrong with America. All I'm doing is reporting news. I didn't even offer any suggestions for anybody to do anything except to go visit the site and read the site. I don't see how that could be dangerous to somebody. Might be dangerous to a particular agenda from a particular group of politicians who don't want you to know certain things or want you to be controlled by their narrative. But I'm making a change. Thanks to Tracy Beams at UncoveredDC.com. She introduced me to Jeff Brain, the CEO of CloutHub. And I will be starting a channel over on CloutHub in the next few weeks. CloutHub is an alternative social media platform. It's kind of like Twitter, it's kind of like Facebook, and it's kind of like YouTube all rolled into one. It's not exactly super intuitive to navigate your way around. It takes a little bit of time to familiarize yourself with their platform. But I'm going to be able to live stream there and say whatever I want to say. I'll be able to touch on issues in the news. And if the people who are sitting in the seats of power in this country disagree with things that I'm saying, they won't be able to, call out the dogs and find my channel to be offensive, violating any kind of community standards just for talking about an issue. Free speech, which happens to be a topic and on my list of things to talk about here. Free speech is part of our guaranteed right. The Constitution does not give me that right, by the way. I have that right by the mere fact that I am a human being. I have the right to free speech. I can talk about whatever I want to talk about. But apparently there are those forces out there that think that we shouldn't be able to talk about those things. Maybe you've had that happen to you. If you're on social media, maybe you've posted some information that has been flagged as false information, or you've had your tweets pulled or something covered up and say this is sensitive or it doesn't take the context into consideration. It's like, share the data, share the information. Eventually the truth rolls around. They don't want you to know everything out, what's going on out there. That's the issue. They don't want you to believe anything except what they want you to believe, whoever they are, right? And again, I'm not going to be talking about hard edge news on YouTube anymore. I have some good stuff. Don't get me wrong. We'll have some good stuff to talk about from a Patriot's perspective, but the stuff it's got a lot of good meat about the direction of our country, that the majority of that will end up being talked about on CloutHub. So I will encourage you to go over, download the CloutHub app on your phone and maybe look it up and look up the new book of Daniel over there. We'll be establishing a presence. My Twitter channel has been suspended. I have my new book of Daniel page on Facebook has very restricted viewership because of the quote unquote false information that I posted, even though it was, peer reviewed and randomly controlled trials with verifiable results, talking about metadata analysis. It wasn't what they wanted us to know, whoever they are. And so they said, you've posted too much false information, even though it wasn't false information. And so we're going to restrict your channel as to how many people can see your news. To which I want to wave one of these fingers in their face, because guess what? I'm going to send people away from their platform and we're going to go over to CloutHub and we're going to have a channel on CloutHub and you'll be able to hear all my stuff over there without being censored. Kind of had it with these platforms. All right. Speaking of censored, this is kind of funny. Let's just move right into my first story here. Disney Plus has removed several movies from its children's channel due to negative stereotypes. The Walt Disney Channel previously showed content warnings for films for negative depictions on this stuff, but now they've just removed access altogether for children under the age of 7. How they know that, I guess only they know. Adults can still view the movies on their Disney Plus accounts, but they have to still see the content warnings. So let's go through some of these stories, right? So Dumbo, interesting film that came out in 1941. It has crows and musical numbers paying homage to racist minstrel shows, where white performers with blackened faces and tattered clothing imitated and ridiculed enslaved Africans on southern plantations. The leader of the group in Dumbo is named Jim Crow, which shares the name of the laws that enforce racial segregation in the United States. The film was made in 1941. It's an issue. Apparently it's unsuitable now for children under 7 to see that kind of stuff. We wouldn't want children to go around, making fun of people on plantations. I haven't seen that. I am turning 60 years old next week, and I don't think I've seen children making fun of of racial people, racially different people on plantations in decades, like a lot of decades. So I don't think that's really a problem, but yet Disney seems to think it is. Peter Pan, 1953. The film portrays Native people in a stereotypical manner that reflects neither diversity of Native populations nor the authentic traditional cultures. It shows them speaking an unintelligible language and repeatedly refers to them as Redskins. Never mind the fact that, like the Washington Redskins, when you talk to Native Americans, they actually were kind of proud of the fact that they had a team named after them. But apparently those who are white think it should be offensive. And so therefore, because they think it should be offensive, it's therefore offensive. And it even portrays Peter and the Lost Boys engaging in dancing, wearing headdresses, and other exaggerated tropes. So if you dress up and put on a headdress and dance around as an Indian, all of a sudden that is unsatisfactory. Swiss Family Robinson, 1960. The pirates who antagonize the Robinson family are portrayed as a stereotypical foreign menace. Mm-hmm. Many appear in yellow face or brown face and are costumed in an exaggerated and inaccurate manner with top-notch hairstyles, robes, and overdone facial makeup and jewelry, reinforcing their barbarian otherness. Kind of like Captain Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean. Just wondering. The Aristocats, the cartoon from 1970, the Siamese cat Shungon is depicted as a racist caricature of East Asian peoples with exaggerated stereotypical traits such as slanted eyes, buck teeth. He sings in a poorly accented English voice by a white actor. An actor, someone who acts and plays a part, playing the piano with chopsticks. These are, what was the phrase they used? Negative stereotypes. All right. My question. Perhaps you've seen the TV show Married with Children. I don't think I ever watched an entire episode. I think I watched a few minutes of it, was totally disgusted, and walked out. However, would it be fair to say that that TV show portrays men with negative stereotypes? Or the American family in general with negative stereotypes? When will Hollywood ban that from the whole face of the planet so that nobody can ever watch that tripe again because of the negative stereotypes? If we're going to be banning people and preventing people from watching something because of a negative stereotype, I could probably list dozens of TV shows and movies that portray people with negative stereotypes that nobody's squawking about now. You know what? Like I said at the beginning of the show, I turn 60 next week, and that means I'm old enough to remember watching the Dean Martin comedy roasts back when they were still live. They weren't even in reruns, and back before you could still kind of find them on YouTube. I'm still wondering why I can even find them on YouTube anymore, the fact that they're even there. Maybe I shouldn't even be talking about that because maybe they'll take them down. But you know what's so funny about the Dean Martin comedy roasts? These people made fun of themselves. They laughed at themselves. The humor about their racial differences and their cultural differences, what was funny. Them laughing at these tropes, at these stereotypes. It's being able to laugh at ourselves instead of taking everything so seriously. But the left has to find a way to divide us, and that's what they set out to do. Let me move on to story number 2. This is something that came across my Facebook feed this morning, actually. And it's an Ayn Rand quote. It says, written in 1957 and truer today than ever, from Atlas Shrugged. Quote, when you see that in order to produce, you need to obtain permission from men who produce nothing. When you see that money is flowing to all who deal, not in goods, but in favors. When you see that men get richer by graft and by pull than by work, and your laws don't protect you from against them, but protect them against you, underscore that. When you see corruption being rewarded and honesty becoming a self-sacrifice, you may know that your society is doomed. Wow. Some of the statements in that quote from that book just ring true. When you see corruption being rewarded, we see that even here in Red, Idaho, and honesty becoming self-sacrifice. When I see people working on their own time without money to try to expose the corruption in Idaho, and the good old boy club that gets their own stuff done at the expense of the people, when the elected representatives are supposed to be representing the people, but are representing special interests, and people are working on their own dime to try to expose that, then you may know that your society is doomed. That's downright scary. So I just posted on that particular meme. I said, you know what? We should make this into a poster, like a big poster, and put it on a stick and go stand in front of Greg Chaney's house. For those of you who are unfamiliar with my story on this, Greg Chaney is a representative here in the state of Idaho. He's a lawyer. He has a record from about 10 years ago of violence and domestic violence, but that doesn't make a difference. He's out there trying to tell us what we morally should and shouldn't be doing, including a bill that he sponsored about targeted picketing, making it illegal to stand in front of an elected official's house or any state employee's house and picket in front of their house. This happened because of some things I've talked about on the podcast before, but for those of you who are new, I'll do a quick review. You may recall this past year, this thing called COVID. And we have these district health people that decided that, we needed to wear masks. And they didn't consider any science. They just listened to anecdotal stories from their quote unquote health professionals whose hospitals are getting $34 million a quarter just because we're in a state of emergency for this COVID thing. And so these people who are getting phone calls from people like Dr. Birx on the National Coronavirus Task Force, encouraging everybody to wear masks and really, just encouraging this board to make it mandatory that people wear masks. We have some people here who have genuine medical reasons to not wear masks. And yet our central district health and other health boards in the state were saying, and they'd write up, if you are medically unable to, then you shouldn't, you're excused, you have an exemption, except that the stores aren't giving any exemptions. You walk into a store, it doesn't matter if you've got a HIPAA valid reason not to wear a mask. The store says, sorry, no entry without a mask. So people trying to say, hey, wait a minute, time out, listen to our story. And yet the Central District Health doing their meetings now in Zoom, not allowing anybody to give testimony or hear anything from the community except the specialists that they call in, these doctors who tell anecdotal stories. So these people couldn't be heard. They tried emailing their concerns in, never addressed. They tried doing voicemail, never addressed. So during one of these meetings where they were going to mandate more masks and put a financial fine and make it a misdemeanor, as if they had the authority to do that, they didn't, but they thought they did. So 3 people went to one of these representatives' houses. This Diana Laciano, she's been voted out, thank God. She was a county commissioner who happened to be sitting on the Central District Health Board. Some health expert she was, I don't know, she just ran for office for county commissioner and somehow she's qualified to sit on the health board. But they went to her house and there was 3 people, one person filming, one person beating on a 5-gallon drum from Home Depot, and one person with an air horn. And they made noise outside of her house, standing on the public sidewalk for about 10 minutes. One person filming, the other 2 making noise, trying to get their attention, trying to get their concerns heard. Very valid, and I mean very valid reasons that they wanted to have their concerns heard, and yet nobody would hear them. Well, those people got arrested, and it's been kind of a crazy circus here with all that, for disturbing the peace. And so this Greg Chaney guy wants to make it illegal to do that kind of thing. And so I thought, wouldn't it be hilarious to go stand in front of his house with this quote from Atlas Shrugged? Listen to the people, and you won't have people standing on the sidewalk in front of your house. It's not hard, Mr. Chaney. It's not hard. Listen to the people. You are an elected representative. Let me break that word down for you. Representative. To represent the views of the election of the people who elected you. We don't elect people as representatives to be rule makers of their own free will and to be kings, to be dictators. We don't elect dictators. We elect representatives to represent the views of the people that you represent. That's how it works, Mr. Chaney. That's how it works, Representative Green, co-sponsor of the bill. That's how it works, every Idaho representative who voted for it. Thank God that was voted down today. Thank God for that. I am appalled that they would even try to curtail freedom of speech, to stand on a sidewalk because you're just trying to get your voices heard. How hard is that? How hard is that? Speaking of people's voice, let me move on to item number 3 on my list, which is more Idaho news, believe it or not. Senate Bill 1110. I'm going to read the purpose. This is the Senate's stated purpose. If you go to idahosession.com and look up Senate Bill number 110, you will find it says the following. The purpose of this legislation is to increase voter involvement and inclusivity in the voter initiative and referendum process. Listen to that again. Increase voter involvement and inclusivity. This will be accomplished by ensuring signatures are gathered from each of the 35 legislative districts, so every part of Idaho is included in this process. This is for the purpose of creating a citizens' initiative. Now, there are 2 ways to get laws voted on, right? To get things passed and voted on. One is through the legislature, where we elect, as I just said, representatives to meet in the House and the State House, and they discuss different possibilities, and they've got a procedure and a process for committees to consider things, and it goes to the House and they vote on it, and then it goes to the Senate and they vote on it, or maybe it starts in the Senate and then it goes to the House. But anyways, there's this process by which things become law. The other process is for citizens to have a citizens initiative. If they gather enough signatures amongst the people, then something can go on the ballot and everybody and the state can vote for it. And I think every state has this option. Right now, I have here the bill. Right now, you have to get 6% of the state of the people registered to vote, of the electors, 6% of the registered people to vote in at least 18 of Idaho's 35 districts. So we have to have a total of 6% of the state, clarify that, let me correct that, 6% of the state's registered voters. So in other words, if you have 100,000 voters and you need 6% of those to agree, no matter where they're from, but you have to have, at the current law says at least 18 of the 35 districts. That makes sense. Go to 35 districts is kind of a fur piece. You got a lot of room to cover. 18 districts, 35, 6% of the people. And if you get that, then you can it goes on the ballot and the entire state gets to vote thumbs up or thumbs down. That's how it works. Thumbs down, thumbs up. So what they're proposing is that all 35 districts, you have to have 6% of the population from all 35 districts. 6% from all 35 districts. Or it can't get on the ballot. That's the proposition. And they're telling us, as I said, this is their stated purpose, is to increase voter involvement and inclusivity. If you read the book 1984, you're familiar with the term doublespeak, because that's doublespeak. Here's what happens with this. We have a very remote state. It's a lot of land in Idaho. 1/3 of our 1.8 million population is right here in southwest Idaho in what we call the Treasure Valley. 1/3 of the whole population resides down here. So that's the metropolitan area of the state, if you want to call it that. Then you've got Pocatello. That's kind of a smaller. It's got a population, and you've got a couple other spots here and there. But the two major population centers are Idaho Falls and Pocatello, the east side of the state, and then you got little Magic Valley in the middle. And then you've got this huge state with a lot of rural, remote areas. 35 counties. Do you think that the people who live in the metropolitan area are going to have the same interests, attitudes, and values as the rest of the state, or they're living out in the middle of Timbuktu with 40 acres and a mule? Because that's what they do. People move. They want to get away from everything. Half of Hollywood owns land up in Sun Valley here in Idaho because they can get away from everything. They buy these big parcels of land, 40 acres, 100 acres, and they can build their own mansions on there and build their own stuff and live out in the middle of nowhere, and nobody bothers them. That's the nice part about Idaho, is people stay out of other people's business. But there's different sets of values in these rural areas than there are in the metropolitan area. Now, Ada County we got Boise is in Ada County. It's the main county here, the main place in Idaho. You have 9 of our 35 districts are in Ada County alone. And then you consider the rest of the valley, you can easily find 9 more. So if the people of Idaho, if in the Treasure Valley portion, want to do something and they can't get any of these numbskulls in the House to make anything happen, because believe it or not, that does happen. We got bills sitting in drawers. These committee chairs aren't touching anything. Bills are coming up and they just stick them in. They won't even take them up for a hearing. Not at all. So if we want to get something done, we are the people. Article 1, Section 2 of the Idaho Constitution, all political power rests in the people. It's inherent, in the people. So we can have a citizens initiative, and you can get 18 districts right here in southern Idaho, 6% of the state's population to gather signatures, and you can get something on the ballot, and the whole state gets to vote on it, yay or nay, thumbs up, thumbs down. Those might be issues that are concerning to people here in the valley that the rest of the state might not care about, but they may actually recognize our desires to do something and approve of it. Or we could flip that. And maybe there's some issue that is of importance to rural Idaho, and they go out to these 18 different districts and they get 6% of the state's population to sign on to this ballot initiative, and they get it on the ballot. And again, the whole state gets to vote on it. Now they're going to make it so that you have to go to every county, every precinct in the state, every legislative district, get my terminology right, every legislative district, and you got to have 6% of the electorate from every district. I want to tell you how arrogant this is. And they're setting this up. This is a setup. And what's really frustrating to me is that we have very solid Patriot representatives who are actually co-sponsoring this bill, and it befuddles me why they are. But I went to a meeting the other night where the assistant majority leader, Mr. Jason Monks, hi, Mr. Monks, how are you? He's the assistant majority leader, and he told this crowd of over 50 people, he says, you know what, somebody asked him about this bill. He says, well, you know what, how our system works is you elect us, and you elect us to go to the state house. We are your representatives, and we represent your bills, and we kind of know how things work, and you're supposed to trust us to pass this legislation that's best for the state. He says, California, when you look at the California voting ballot, it's all citizens initiatives. We don't want to be like California. And I listened to that, and I go, ooh, how slick. Because there is a whole influx of people from California moving to Idaho. And there's kind of this, keep California Idaho. Don't Californiate my Idaho. So We don't want that California. I can't even say it. But we got a problem. Like I just said, they take these ballots and they stick them they take these issues, these bills, these ideas that come up, and they stick them in the drawer, and the committee chair doesn't even hear them. So the citizen doesn't have a voice. Representative Monks, as arrogant as you might want to sound, because that's exactly how you may not want it to sound that way, but that's exactly how you came across, is that you know better and your system is the only system. Well, when we have right now more than a dozen bills in we got a State Affairs Committee in the House and a State Affairs Committee in the Senate, and there's more than a dozen bills sitting in those chairs' drawers that nobody will listen to. They won't come up for a discussion in the committee because the Speaker of the House doesn't want them to, because the Speaker in the House goes up and visits with the governor, the man on the second floor, at least a couple times every day during the session. So he's doing the governor's bidding. He's been there way too long. He's getting his favors, and all this information trickles down, and you're not going to let that bill come out of your committee. And so it doesn't. And so, no, Mr. Monks, the citizens don't have a voice. And yours shouldn't be the only way that something becomes law in our state. So I am going to call these guys out and just say, you know what? Power corrupts. You guys shouldn't have all the power. Article 1, Section 2 of the Idaho Constitution, all political power is inherent in the people. So I say, I really hope this Senate Bill 1110 in Idaho does not pass. If you're watching from Idaho, go to legislature.idaho.gov/legislature and find out who your representatives are. Contact them and tell them you don't want Senate Bill 1110 to pass at all in any way. Keep the citizen's voice alive. Let's move on. Let's move south of Idaho into Nevada, where this past week the Socialists have swept the Nevada Democratic Party elections. That's right. The Socialists took over the Democratic Party in Nevada, and guess what? The entire Democrat Party staff quit as a result. This is off over at NOQ Report. You might head over there to read this whole story. But Nevada, it says, is a microcosm of the Democrat Party, as the Democratic Socialists, also known as neo-Marxists, are taking over the party in their quest to take down the nation. So we saw the sharp lurch to the left by the Democratic Party in Nevada, where every party leadership position was won by candidates backed by the Democratic Socialists. They defeated the Harry Reid machine in the state, and Harry Reid, by the way, does have quite the machine in the state still, prompting an instant response by the Democrat establishment to resign in protest. It says, not long after Judith Whitmer won her election on Saturday to become chair of the Nevada Democratic Party. Keep in mind, this is a Democrat socialist who's now chair of the Democrat Party in Nevada. She got an email from the party's executive director, Alana Mounts. And the message from Mounts began with a note of congratulations. And then she got to her main point that she was quitting. And so was every other employee. And so were the consultants. And the staff would be taking their severance checks with them. Thank you very much. It says on March 6th, a coalition of progressive candidates backed by the local chapter of Democratic Socialists of America took over the leadership of the Nevada Democrat Party, sweeping all 5 leadership positions in a contested election. Whitmer had been chair of the Clark County Democrat Party. So what did the establishment people do? They kind of saw the writing on the wall. They knew this was happening. Or was likely to happen. They moved almost $500,000 out of the Democrat Party's coffers from the state level, and they moved it into Democratic senatorial campaign accounts so that the socialists couldn't have their access on that money. Now, it says here, Is this a good thing? Well, Alan Keyes and I talked about this on his show on Tuesday, and you can probably find that over on Brighteon.com on the IAMTV channel. IAMTV.us is also a place, but all those are found over on Brighteon. We had a very good discussion about this. And what do you do with that, really? But here's what I'm continuing the NOQ reports piece here. It says this is not going to be an isolated case, because we're seeing a big shift on the left to the leftist fringe. The AOCs of the planet are starting to take over the Democrat Party. It says we're seeing that that's going to be like the new normal. This is why the schism is kind of worrisome, because it's happening rapidly. And it bodes ill for Republicans who have hopes of retaking the Senate and possibly the House in 2022. What the Democrat socialists lack in sound policies, listen up, they make up for with strong emotions. And that sways people. AOC drives emotions, right? Leftists are more inclined to follow the lead of AOC, Bernie Sanders, because of the emotions that they bring out in people. It says the only reason that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are still in charge is because the radicals are still an election or two away from the majority. Think about that for a second. A couple more elections. Nancy Pelosi's 80 years old. Chucky Schumer ain't far behind that. You get a couple more years of people like AOC. Well, look up Justice Democrats. Go to Wikipedia and look up Justice Democrats. Go on to YouTube and find out how the Justice Democrats recruited AOC. They recruit people to run as Democratic Socialists, far left people. And they position them as centrists, and then they govern from the left. And so what's going to happen with this? I do believe that you're not going to change anything on the Democrat side. But I'd also, as Alan Keyes and I discussed, you can, I think, approach some of these Democrats who are now probably a little bit shell-shocked and say, are you a patriot? Do you really care about America, or do you believe all this social justice stuff that the Marxists are pulling on is trying to divide the country? If they really are a patriot, and there still are pockets of what I call Bill Clinton Democrats left. There's no more John F. Kennedy Democrats left. But we still have pockets of Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton Democrats left, who still are patriots, who still do care about the country. But because their daddy was a Democrat and their granddaddy was a Democrat, they got to be a Democrat. Maybe they just are holding on from that hope. But I think when the lights start to go on and they see all this big lurch to the left, there might be a hope to bring them kind of like the walk away movement and say, hey, come join the Patriots. We care about the future of America here, really. Because if we let this go, it's going to be a Marxist run place. Do not cheer the leftward lurch of the Democrat Party. That belief the belief that it makes them weaker fails to take into account that this nation is being more and more driven by emotions. So we on the right, the conservatives of America, really need to, it says here, exceed their passion and win with the ideas. I've got some news on that coming up. You may or may not have heard of what happened in Eagle, Idaho. But what's happened in Eagle, Idaho is we had 5 Democrats on the city council and a Democrat mayor. This is a suburb of Boise. A couple years ago, they had a Democrat mayor, 5 Democrat representatives on the city council. People kind of woke up as to what was really going on because they're nonpartisan seats. Like in Boise, these you don't run as a Democrat or a Republican. You just run for the position because they're a nonpartisan seat. Well, they found out that these people had been registered as Democrats when they first moved to Idaho. And then they registered as unaffiliated or independents. And then they ran and they positioned themselves as conservatives, but they weren't. Well, someone found out about this stuff, exposed all their background, and now we have 5 conservatives on the city council in Eagle, Idaho, and a conservative mayor. That model of reaching out and taking initiative is expanding. Meridian, Idaho, same thing. Other towns in Idaho, and we'll be even starting up a Conservatives of Boise group. So people who are conservative can get together and develop strategies for exposing these nonpartisan races as to what's really going on, getting the word out, and just like the Democrats are doing, getting just as emotional about it. Because this is our country we're talking about here, and we really are in a war. And I got an article coming out on uncoverdc.com this coming Friday, which will be the 12th, about our 5 strategies for how to win our civil war. And it's a civil war. The enemies, the aggressors, are the Marxists. And they're not firing bullets, thank God, nor should they be. We don't want anybody doing that, but they're being aggressively passive-aggressive, and they're doing these things like what these Marxists are doing in Nevada. So we don't want that. Let me move on to my last story here, and that is more news, by the way, coming up on that Conservatives of group. I think you'll be interested in what's going on there. Anyways, and I'll be doing a story on that for Uncover DC as well. Story number 5, and then I'll wrap it up. Biden administration claims that crowding migrant kids in shipping containers is humane. Remember all the hoopla of Donald Trump having kids in cages, and how horrible, and all the emotion, and oh my gosh, he's putting kids in cages and he's destroying their lives, and all of just doing the same thing that Obama was doing, but nobody has said squat about it when Obama did it, but they're doing it to Trump, right? Kids in cages. Oh, the horrors. Well, it says here, the Biden White House is attempting to defend the detainment of children at the southern border as a humane practice. Now it's called safe and humane option, according to the press secretary. They circle back. We've made a policy decision as an administration that the humane and moral approach is to keep these kids safe and get them into facilities that are safe. Well, what are these safe facilities? They're shipping containers with an air conditioner thrown on them, of course. So no windows, shipping container, close the door, air conditioning, lights, of course, no place to see out. These are safe and humane containers, right? And then she actually had the gall to say, this is not kids being kept in cages. This is a facility being opened that's going to follow the standards of the Health and Human Services facilities. And then there's pictures, and then you see that it's shipping containers with air conditioners on them, of course. I guess it's not kids in cages, right? It's kids in boxes. But do you hear anything from our friends in the left-wing media talking about this? Anything at all? No. All of this is the children migrant facilities, is what they now call them. Children's migrant facilities. Shipping containers. Or maybe we should put them in the big fenced-in areas where they could at least see other kids and see what the world was happening in the world out there. Kids in cages. All right. I want to wrap up by talking a little bit again. If you've tuned in late, I'm talking about what I've been doing here on my podcast. I record these live streams here on YouTube, and then I upload them to various other sites. I got one of my live streams that was pre-recorded that I recorded last week, back on March 1st, was taken down. I went to go onto YouTube 2 days ago, and it says, you violated our community standards. We took down your video. They were very polite about it. They didn't tell me any information. They didn't say why it was taken down. But if I have another one of those episodes, then I can't upload anything for a week. How polite of them. They said it in a very nice way. Because it's your first offense, you're not going to get punished. But just know that if you do it, if you violate our community standards again, you won't be able to upload anything for a week. So that kind of irritated me. That was kind of like the final straw. I had my Twitter account totally suspended, thousands and thousands of followers in there and very interactive stuff, able to talk about things. Apparently I was talking too much truth, and like so many other people that you may know of, they got their accounts suspended. That happened to me. I have a Facebook page, New Book of Daniel, and that I was apparently posting too much truth, and which they said was false information. I will bet you big money that it wasn't. It just didn't fit their narrative, whoever they are. Although I think they are adherents to a particular political philosophy of a German guy back in the mid-1800s who had a really long beard, and his first name was Karl. And he has an X in his last name. You can figure that out. These people are adherents to his worldview. And they decided that what I was saying didn't match that particular worldview. And they decided to say, well, you've been posting stuff here on Facebook that is false information. So we're going to restrict the number of people who can see your page. So even though I've got hundreds and hundreds of people following the New Book of Daniel page over on Facebook, if I post something, if I'm lucky, if 40 or 50 people see what I post, including these videos. So I talked with Tracy Beans over at Uncover DC, editor-in-chief, and she hooked me up with Jeff Brain, over the CEO of CloutHub. And that is another social media platform. And it's kind of like the best of all worlds. You've got a Twitter component, you've got a Facebook component, and you've got a YouTube component all rolled into one. And so I'll be opening, I already have opened up my New Book of Daniel CloutHub page. And I will be able to live stream there, where I'll be able to talk about really meaty issues without fear of having the videos being taken down or being told that I'm publishing false information. Because I think you're smart enough to know that if I say something, you know how to go look it up. You don't have to just believe Daniel Bobinski. In fact, I would ask that you not just believe me right off the top. Everything that I share with you on these podcasts, I have cited sources for. And I go back, and when I upload and finish up all the show notes for these things, I put these links in there so you can go back and read them for yourself. This isn't just me. I'm just sharing news with a patriot perspective that Marxists don't like. So anyways, I will encourage you, if you want to get on with the meat of the New Book of Daniel podcast, I'll still be covering these things with a little lighter news from a patriot perspective. But if you want the good, meaty stuff from a patriot perspective, I will encourage you to open up a CloutHub account and follow the New Book of Daniel channel over there. That'll be up in the next couple of weeks. I will make a big announcement when that does happen. So this is now the 10th of March, 2021. This is Daniel Bobinski with the New Book of Daniel podcast. To get a hold of me, you can leave a note in the comments down below. You can follow me on any of the social media platforms and send me a message. Like I said, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Gab. I'm on MeWe. Just look up New Book of Daniel. It's that simple. Track me there. You can also read my stuff, my thoughts on political issues over at uncoverdc.com. I'm also over at Red State. And there's also some other cool news popping up here in the near future. I'll hold off on that. But feel free to look me up on any of those. Like I said, I have an article coming out on Friday the 12th about what we need to do to defend America on this cultural civil war. Very interesting piece. And with that, I'm going to call it a day. You call it a show. We've got almost a 50-minute show here. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening very much. My name is Daniel Bobinski. I really am glad that you tune in, because it gives me a reason just to talk, and have somebody know, oh, well, Dan's got something to say. So, all right. With that, I will catch you on the next show. Until then, be blessed.